And surge is the #1 reason why you have to evacuate. Run from the water. You can hide from the wind, but you got to run from the water, Jim. And that's why evacuations are in place, and people need to heed them.
Absolutely. It's not a fire drill. It's the real thing. Don't expect any changes from that surge forecast that you see. All right. That's going to happen regardless of what happens from this point in terms of intensity. So, Jim, some great points there. Let's take you to, are we doing Tampa first, Carmody, or are we going to do the drone? What do you want to do? Okay, let's do the drone. Let's go, because I want to show, speaking of vulnerable to storm surge, as we watch the waves and the water rise, especially during the day tomorrow, we will chew away at the beaches. We will chew away more and more at the beaches here. Eventually, this wave run-up is going to come in between some of these buildings here. Could it get as high as the patios that we've been broadcasting from? Sure. We're easily at 9 feet. All right, so we can easily see that. So this is something we absolutely have to watch out for, but you can already see how rough that surf is out there. And a lot of that was kicked up with the east wind we had over the last couple of days. So, that isn't really even the storm. There's a buoy offshore right now about 50 miles to my south. It's already got 54-mile-an-hour winds. But look at the area of storm surge. So think about it. You've got a storm that's coming north, and then it's going to start moving northeast up on landfall. That water, with winds that'll be out of the southwest, are putting that up into that corner. So if you've ever seen a contact lens or dome, that's what it looks like up in that corner. So you're going to push the water into that dome and fill that dome. Now look at what happens to the waves, interestingly enough. Some of those waves actually go toward the panhandle versus into the dome. So if you're watching us from Destin and you're watching us from Fort Walton, even Pensacola to an extent, you're going to have big waves coming your way. Big wave propagation out from this thing. So there's all sorts of hazards, ladies and gentlemen. But the surge, especially the fact that you're looking at this Big Bend area where the water could get shoved 10 to 12 miles inland, you gotta be out of this. And it's gonna come in before landfall. Because if we're piling up water, it's gonna come in before landfall. And even Tampa Bay, Steph, could get a 2 to 4 foot storm surge. If you ever made your way out toward Clearwater Beach and St. Pete, there's a small area there on the western edge of the causeway that's pretty shallow, and there's going to be waves and water lapping over the top of that thing. Over to you.
All right, Jim, thanks for that. Well, coming up next here on the Weather Channel, of course, Michael is one of the top stories that we are talking about impacting millions. So we will be live all day and all night from landfall and beyond. And if you have questions, we've got answers. We're sifting through your inquiries on social media. Just tag us with your questions.
One of the best new fall shows is Single Parents.
Will not let you down.
I'm going to leave this running, guys. We're going to have a live stream for a while.
I thought you were watching the kids. I thought you were watching
Sorry.
the kids. I'm sorry back.
New Single Parents, Wednesdays on ABC.
Oats seem pretty simple, right? They're actually kind of extraordinary. See, oats contain a soluble fiber called beta-glucan. Beta what? Stay with me here. This is where it gets interesting. This fiber really doesn't like cholesterol, so it traps some of the bad cholesterol and shows it a thing or two. Making Quaker oats a delicious part of a heart-healthy diet. High five, fiber.
How do you top mac and cheese? Start with 100% clean ingredients, like Vermont white cheddar. Then add bacon, barbecue chicken, or Baja blend. Catering and delivery now available. Panera, food as it should be. Moving. That's harder now because of psoriatic arthritis, but you're still moved by moments like this. Don't let psoriatic arthritis take them away. Taltz reduces joint pain and stiffness and helps stop the progression of joint damage. For people with moderate to severe psoriasis, 90% saw significant improvement. Taltz even gives you a chance at completely clear skin. Don't use if you're allergic to Taltz. Before starting, you should be checked for tuberculosis. Taltz may increase risk of infections and lower your ability to fight them. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, symptoms, or received a vaccine or plan to. Inflammatory bowel disease can happen with Taltz, including worsening of symptoms. Serious allergic reactions can occur. For all the things that move you, ask your doctor about Taltz.
You never forget your first race. And you never back down from the next. You're the brotherhood of muscle.
Why call them mastering something, because when you want to create an entirely new feeling, the difference between excellence and mastery is all the difference in the world. Introducing the all-new Lexus ES, a product of mastery. Experience amazing at your Lexus dealer. Joining meeting.
Fight your cough and break up mucus with new Alka-Seltzer Plus Cough and Mucus. Just one pill works 12 hours, all day or all night.
Sorry, guys, we got to deal with the commercials.
Most people don't know that pharmacy prices vary wildly and that insurance isn't always your best bet. GoodRx is an easy way for Americans to save up to 80% on their prescriptions. You type in the name of your prescription, you find a coupon, and say...
I can mute them.
GoodRx
How do you like that? I'll mute it for a while. When it comes back on, then we'll go ahead and do this. They're telling people now that if you're in the evacuation area to leave before the roads become so crowded you won't be able to get out. And they said an exact time before the storm hits. They're evacuating areas right now. Evacuation route zone maps. You can go to floridadisaster.com. I gotta plug the electricity into this thing or I'm gonna lose my cell phone. So I will do that.
Currently in our area, 68 degrees under partly cloudy skies. Today, partly cloudy with an afternoon shower or thunderstorm. High 81. Chance of rain 40%. Tonight, scattered showers or thunderstorms. Low 67. Chance of rain 60%.
Sorry, you gotta go through everybody's weather
Wednesday,
before we get back to
thunderstorms
us.
likely. High 73. Chance of rain 90%. Locally heavy rainfall possible. Here's our 7-day outlook.
It's now time to look at the visible satellite, and this is something we have to wait for the sun to rise and we can see. And this always gives us a much more detailed look at what is happening with our system. This is if we are sitting out on, in outer space, and we have our camera. So that's why you have to wait for the sun to rise to show you the clouds, and you see that this thing is really starting to get its act together. You see some of those higher cloud tops that are bursting in the center of this, the counterclockwise flow. On the left-hand side, you see how it kind of looks like eyelashes on the far left-hand side of your screen there? That means that we have some good outflow. We weren't seeing that yesterday as we were getting sheared from that side, but as we get more and more sunlight and this thing develops, let me tell you, it's going to look like a beast. All right, let's talk about Hurricane Michael now more with Jim Cantori. And Jim, that visible satellite, it does a lot for us meteorologists when it comes in. It just shows us so much more.
Including getting us to Abrams. This is the way I was when you were showing that.
I know, right?
I'm just like staring over. I'm like, oh my gosh, look at that thing. You're right. You do the same. We all did when the field talking about it. So let's get into this because we got a heck of a hurricane coming, guys. I don't want to sugarcoat this. We're gonna have storm surge. We're gonna have overwash. We're gonna have damage as a result of this hurricane, and we need to talk about it. So first of all, the infrareds. That showed you the visible. This is the infrared. This bases. It puts colors essentially to different cloud tops. We know the higher you go in atmosphere, the colder the temperatures, right? So the deeper colors, the darker colors, are higher, colder cloud tops or more intense convection. So you're looking at, stuff that's up there around 50, 60,000 feet in terms of these big towers. And those towers around the center are what's helping to develop this thing. Some good news right now, if you're getting any last-minute preps done, you'll notice the radar, most of the heavy stuff is offshore. We've got a couple of drips of rain here. We had some heavy rain yesterday at Dauphin Island, that's for sure, and even some heavy rain down on the Louisiana coast. But it should be, overall, a relatively rain-free day, all right, to make those last-minute preps. But by tomorrow morning, all bets are off. All right, what we know about this is it has every opportunity to get stronger than it is. Why? Ocean heat content is high. Water temperatures are in the mid to upper 80s. So no changes in thinking on anybody's part as to this should become a Category 3 hurricane and come in at 120 miles per hour. And hopefully it will not be stronger than that. There's no real signs of rapid intensification, but remember, we still got 24 hours plus to go. And this thing could still ramp up even further than it is, and we think it will. By the way, 60% of all landfalling hurricanes in the month of October have been in this month right here, in the month of October. Huge wind field. Huge wind field. 200 miles with the tropical storm, 40 miles with the hurricane force winds, and sometimes when that storm comes close to the coast, the friction allows that hurricane force wind field to expand a little bit. But if it accelerates and is intensifying upon landfall, we are going to bring that power damage potential well inland. So if you're watching this from Valdosta, Tallahassee, Tipton, Georgia, all the way over even Augusta, Columbia, Charlotte, you may have some damaging winds over your way. So that is absolutely something we have to watch with this. That is the number 1 and 2 issues, the storm surge and the power outage potential. Steph, over to you.
All right, Jim, we now are answering questions that people have been sending in, and we want to bring in Jen Carfagno to help answer these questions.
All right, Steph here. So people have been asking a lot of great questions. One that we've heard from Byron. He wants to know if Michael could stall out and then build strength before landfall.
Well,
I'll let you answer that.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with this is it's going to build strength regardless if it's moving or if it stalls out. Because what's happening is you see this little system from the west, that's going to pick it up. So there's really no way for this to stall, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to strengthen. They're two separate things. So no, Jen, it's not going to stall because we have our trough coming from the west. Yes, it is going to strengthen because there's no shear and warmer temperatures. Now, the second question that we got from Judith.
Well, exactly.
Yeah, is from one of our loyal viewers, Jen. Basically, this is a long question. I'm going to summarize it for you. She said, you know, we have this storm in the southwest. We have Michael. There's a lot going on. So is any of this going to exacerbate the situation?
You know, we should look at the water vapor and just show all the players. And I tell you, look, Jim was just talking about ogling over the visible satellite and all the details we can see. The water vapor has been tremendous lately, too, because of how much has been going on. I mean, we started off with this big, deep trough over the west that has dug in, tapped into some of that Sergio moisture. So we'll see that. The trough moving east over the eastern U.S., and by the way, in the middle of the country, that's what's causing your heavy rain and your severe weather. But the trough that is doing that over the middle of the country will move east and will pick up Michael. So luckily, everything's moving, Steph. I guess is the moral of the story. Things are moving along. And so, yes, tropical moisture from the Pacific has been getting into our trough, but at the same time, it's moving. So it's not going to sit and dump, feet of rain like we saw with Florence just a couple of weeks ago.
Right, but it is going to bring tropical storm force winds to Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, a lot of people. So, Jim, this is not just a coastal entity. You need to be prepared to lose power in several other states.
You know, it's interesting talking to Governor Rick Scott this morning, Stephanie. He just makes me feel like they're ready to come in with the arsenal afterward. All right, Steph, the $1 million question everybody wants to know. Where are you headed for this thing?
Good question, Jim. I still actually don't know. So we have a meeting right after the show.
Okay.
But I will be joining you somewhere, I assume, down on the coast. But you'll have to follow me on social media to find out.
Yeah. Here's my call. I think within 30 miles of Panama City, we will have a landfall point. All right? Be safe, everybody.
All right, guys, we're going to let it go. Oh, I'll let it run one more time. I'm going to mute the...
So listen,
They're giving 15 minutes.
Think...
We're going to mute it. This is going to be a major hurricane, guys. Cat 2. They're saying it'll be a Cat 3 by this afternoon. I like the Weather Channel better than AccuWeather. They give more detail. Sorry, I'm viewing this on my TV. I apologize. Gonna have to go through the commercials though. If you're in the Florida area, they do have a link called, there it is, Evacuation Route Zone. Go to floridadisaster.com and they'll give you your route that's, they're telling you to evacuate from and what zones you have to evacuate from. Hey, you're watching TV. What can I say? You know, with TV, you get commercials. They'll have it back up here in a few minutes. The governor of Florida was just on a little while ago, urging people to evacuate from the zones that have been evacuated. They say they cannot come and get you until this is passed by tomorrow, period. It's supposed to hit in the morning, a.m. Sorry, I got commercials muted. I can't handle commercials. They look like now Panama City, Florida is going to be the point of impact. That's what they're saying. If you don't know your evacuation zone, go to floridadisaster.com and it'll let you know what zone you're in. Here we go.
Huge storm that hit the Florida Panhandle in decades. This storm will bring torrential rain to most of the Panhandle and Big Bend, which means flooding will be a major issue. This storm will be life-threatening and extremely dangerous.
At least people are leaving.
All right, Hurricane Michael continues to barrel towards the Florida Gulf Coast. Thanks for joining us this morning. Millions of residents are on alert for a potentially catastrophic hurricane. This is likely going to be a major hurricane. It has now strengthened into a Category 2. Winds are at 100 miles per hour, and people rushing their preparations to completion. Guys, we're running out of time. We've got about 12 hours before the weather starts to turn for the worst. We're talking tropical storm force conditions arriving after sunset tonight, and then only going downhill from there. Mandatory evacuation here began at 6 a.m. local time in Panama City Beach for zones A, B, and C. We had a passing shower, but for the most part, things are still pretty quiet. However, the waves, they are increasing. Take a look at the conditions here that we're seeing. A little peak of sunshine. This is about the end of the sunshine as the clouds have really filled up the sky. The waves have gotten high. Double red flags are flying. The beaches are closed, and I don't see a soul here on the beach. So preparations need to be hurried, if not completed, and you need to be at your spot for the most part within the next 6 to 12 hours before the worst of the weather starts to go through. All right, let's get the latest here on Hurricane Michael. Winds now 100 miles per hour as of the 8 a.m. advisory, the 7 a.m. Central Daylight Time advisory. Pressure now down to 968 millibars. It's moving to the northwest at 12 miles per hour, so it's got a good clip to it, and that's gonna, further the movement. So unlike Florence, where it just kind of stalled out on the coast, that's not going to happen with this storm. But it's also going to increase that surge and even increase some of the winds. And so wind's going to be a big factor with this. Take a look at our hurricane warnings and notice how they don't just linger at the coast. We have hurricane warnings, guys, all the way into parts of southeastern Alabama and much of southwest Georgia. We're talking Thomasville, Bainbridge, and areas across Grady counties there, Lake Seminole, all under that hurricane warning. This includes Tallahassee, much of the I-10 corridor, the entire Florida Panhandle under a hurricane warning. And then tropical storm watches go up into southern Georgia. Savannah, you're under a tropical storm watch. Charleston, South Carolina, you're under a tropical storm watch, and these extend all the way back towards Mobile and the Mississippi Gulf Coast. Also, Tampa Bay, you're also to see possible tropical storm force gusts at times, and storm surge is going to be a big issue along much of Florida's Gulf Coast, really from Tampa Bay all the way up to the Panhandle. Take a look at the track. They're fairly confident. We know it's going to make landfall for the most part along Florida's Panhandle, anywhere really just to the east of Pensacola, over towards Apalachicola. So the exact detail, Kelly, models are in very good agreement that this is likely going to come in as a major hurricane, and it's also likely going to make a landfall somewhere within 50 miles of Panama City Beach, either to the west or towards the east.
All right, and Chris, like you said, everybody needs to finish up those preparations as Michael is on the move toward the Gulf Coast. Here's what we know at this hour about Hurricane Michael. The National Weather Service is warning people all along the Gulf Coast that this storm isn't just heading to any one town. There are warnings for more than 300 miles of coastline. So keep that in mind. Everybody needs to prepare. Tallahassee, Florida is not only in the path of the hurricane, but it's also an evacuation area for those leaving the coastline. So starting at noon, there will be 5 evacuation centers opening up there. And we've got the life-threatening storm surge as well as, hurricane force winds and heavy rain being the biggest threats associated with Hurricane Michael. We want to bring in Dr. Greg Postel, our hurricane expert, to have a more in-depth look at Michael. Really no surprise here. This thing has strengthened, but unfortunately it's not done yet.
No, it's not done. It's going to continue to strengthen, and we're seeing significant changes even ongoing now that we didn't see this time yesterday. I think an eye is becoming apparent even on the satellite pictures. Now, that is a sign that this thing is strengthening even more and may strengthen quickly during the day today and overnight tonight. The satellite presentation, very impressive. You can see a well-defined circulation. The outflow, the higher level clouds are spreading out in all different directions now, as opposed to yesterday it was more leaning on one side than the other. Now it appears much more symmetrical, which does suggest that it is indeed a strengthening hurricane. It is breathing effectively and doing so, unfortunately, to the potential peril of many in its path along the northern Gulf Coast. This is what the wind pattern looks like right now, not just, of course, in and around the hurricane, where we do see the pressure now down to around 968 millibars. But look at the overall wind pattern over, for example, the east coast of Florida and over the northern Gulf Coast. There's a broad east wind already in place that in some cases is gusting over 20 miles per hour. So there's a large, what's called a gradient wind. In other words, not just associated with the hurricane, but the larger pattern that is going to lead to significant, perhaps, flooding across parts of the east coast of Florida and in addition to areas on the northern Gulf Coast. So this is sort of enveloped in a larger sort of windy regime that is only going to probably exacerbate some of the flooding potential and the rip current risks already, we think, in place across parts of eastern Florida. Now, the hurricane hunters are in there right now, and they're doing their diligence and slicing and dicing their way through Michael, and they're finding winds quite a bit stronger than they were this time yesterday. I think it was around 70 this time yesterday. Now it's over 100. The SFMR instruments scanning the sea surface and finding about 100-mile-per-hour wind inside of that. And that is, of course, substantial. And it's going to get even worse than that. But here's another point, and this is something to take away when we start thinking about how strong hurricanes are in terms of winds. The strong wind extends.
They're going to have an update at 10 o'clock.
Miles. So in other words, 30 to 40 miles
That's an hour
winds
from
here
now.
shaded in the dark blue extend way away from the center. And those will likely be moving toward the coast, and if not on the coast, maybe tonight and early tomorrow morning. Certainly in terms of gusts, but I'm talking about sustained winds. So that's something to prepare for. Take your precautions immediately and enact your hurricane plan right now. On the radar right now, the key parts of the Florida Keys, Key West, seeing some scattered showers, but the main band here of Michael is still well offshore, but that is going to be steadily moving toward the northern Gulf Coast. Some of the big waves out there we've seen with the buoys up to 22 feet in some locations.
Wow.
Many locations are going to see much bigger waves than that over the Gulf of Mexico. Now, we're already starting to see some of those bigger swell into the northern Gulf Coast. Chris Bruin is showing you that in your Panama City, and that is going to continue to increase. So the water action is going to get more dangerous through the day, and the weather will begin to get very bad overnight tonight all along the North Florida coast. This is the official forecast now for the Hurricane Center. 120-mile-per-hour wind expected at or near landfall. Now, that's just an estimate here. There is some suggestion that it could even be stronger based on some of the guidance. So this could be a very high-end hurricane as it closes in on the coast. And remember, the wind is one impact that will go inland into Georgia as well. But the storm surge will also be very significant, in some places exceeding 10 feet. So inundation above normally dry ground, practically unsurvivable if you haven't evacuated already. So be very mindful of that. Follow the advice of the local officials. Know where to go. If you're ordered to evacuate, please do so. FloridaDisaster.org is a great place to go to find out if indeed you
All right,
need to
guys,
leave.
we're going to call
And Chris
quits.
Bruin, I'm gonna send it over
10
to you
o'clock, I'll put it
in
back
Panama
on.
City.
God
And I can
bless.
see those
Be
winds
safe.
growing in size right behind you.
Yeah.